The silence in my study wasn't peaceful. It was the kind of heavy, pressurized silence that precedes a structural failure. I sat in my wingback chair, the leather cool against my back, watching the dust motes dance in a single shaft of Pennsylvania sunlight that pierced through the heavy oak blinds. Outside, the woods of Bucks County were turning a violent shade of crimson as autumn took hold, the maples shedding their leaves like discarded memories. This house was my fortress. I'd built it on a foundation of honesty and 30 years of hard-earned retirement. But across from me, Marcus was polluting the air. He smelled of expensive bourbon and the metallic, sharp tang of a man who was drowning and looking for someone to pull under with him. "Arthur, look at me," Marcus said, his voice dropping to a theatrical, desperate whisper. When he paced my Persian rug, his Italian loafers clicking like a countdown on the hardwood floors. "I'm not some street thug asking for a handout. I'm your son-in-law. I'm the man who makes your daughter happy. But right now, the bank is breathing down my neck because of a clerical error in the logistics firm. $200,000. That's all it takes to make the wolves go away. It's a drop in the bucket for a man with your estate." I looked at him, truly looked at him. I saw the cheapness beneath the tailored suit, the way his eyes darted toward the safe behind my desk. "A clerical error, Marcus? Or a character flaw? I've seen your books. Or rather, I've seen the books you think I haven't seen. You've been bleeding MV Transport dry for 18 months. Marcus stopped dead. His eyes narrowed, turning into dark slits of malice. "What is that supposed to mean?" "It means that Martha worked 3 jobs so we could build this life," I said, my voice as cold as the Delaware River in January. "That money in the trust isn't a slush fund for your failures or your ego. It's Sarah's future, and you aren't touching a cent of it. Not today, not ever." The air in the room curdled. Marcus didn't argue. He didn't plead. He stepped forward, his shadow swallowing my desk. Before I could even register the movement, his hand whipped across the air. The crack of his palm against my jaw sounded like a dry branch snapping in a winter storm. My head slammed to the side, my vision splintering into white sparks and a high-pitched ringing. The physical pain was sharp, but the realization was sharper. He had just declared war in the one place I was supposed to be safe. And before we go deeper into this story, take a second and hit that subscribe button. Give this video a like and let us know where you're watching from. I'm curious to know how far these stories travel. I tasted copper, the familiar iron-rich flavor of my own blood. I didn't move. I stayed in that slumped position for 5 seconds, letting the heat of the slap settle into my skin, letting the heartbeat in my jaw steady itself. Marcus stood over me, his chest heaving, his knuckles white. He thought he was looking at a broken old man. He didn't realize he was looking at a man who had spent 40 years in the shadows of the Philadelphia shipping yards, dismantling criminal empires from the inside out. 9 a.m. tomorrow, Arthur," Marcus hissed, the charming husband mask completely shattered. "Have the envelope ready. If I don't see the money, I'll tell Sarah you've started hitting the bottle. I'll tell her you've become unstable since Martha died. Who do you think she'll believe? Her husband? Or a lonely old man rotting in a big house?" He turned and slammed the door, the vibration rattling the framed photo of my wife on the mantel. I sat in the darkening room, the bruise on my face turning a deep royal purple. Marcus thought he was a predator. He forgot that the most dangerous thing in the woods is an old wolf with nothing left to lose. I waited until I heard his SUV roar down the gravel driveway, the sound of his reckless acceleration fading into the distance. I went to the kitchen, took a bag of frozen peas from the freezer, and held it to my jaw. The cold was a relief, but the mental clarity was better. I didn't feel anger. Anger is a messy, a hot emotion that leads to mistakes. I felt the cold, clinical focus of an auditor. I headed to the basement. Behind a false shelf in my wine cellar was a small, high-tech office, a relic of my days investigating maritime heists. I powered up the 3-monitor setup, the blue glow reflecting in my glasses. "Okay, Marcus," I whispered, "let's do a real autopsy on your life." I started with the physical evidence. Earlier that day, I'd gone through the trash bags Marcus had dropped in my bin. He was too arrogant to think I'd look. I found ATM receipts from a branch in Rittenhouse Square, an area he claimed he never visited. I found a dry cleaning tag for a woman's silk coat, size small. Sarah is a medium. Then I went digital. I contacted an old informant named Gears who ran a dispatch board out of Scranton. Arthur, I know I thought you were in Florida or 6 feet under. Gears rasped over the encrypted line. Not yet, Gears. I need the manifest logs for MV transport, the real ones. The ones Marcus hides from the DOT and his own wife. That's a heavy lift, Arthur. That kid is connected to some nasty independent contractors who don't like being looked at. He slapped me, Gears, in my own study. The silence on the other end was long and heavy. I'll have the files in your inbox in 10 minutes. Nobody slaps an auditor. When the files arrived, the scale of the betrayal was breathtaking. Marcus was running a double billing scam where he charged clients for premium shipping and then double brokered the loads to cut rate uninsured drivers. He was pocketing nearly $40,000 a month. But where was it going? Before we continue, take a second and share your thoughts so far on this story below. I read every single one. I bypassed his personal cloud account and found a folder labeled Lumina Holdings. The address wasn't an office. It was a luxury penthouse in Philly. I hacked the building's security portal and saw the footage. Marcus, draped in designer clothes I'd never seen him wear, walking into the lobby with a woman named Elena. But then I found the exit strategy. Marcus had a fake passport under the name Mark Vance and a one-way ticket to Costa Rica booked for next Tuesday. He wasn't just stealing from Sarah. He was planning to abandon her in a mountain of federal debt and legal fire while he lived like a king on the coast. He wasn't looking for a loan. He was looking for his getaway cash. The next morning, and the fog was so thick it felt like the world had been erased, leaving only me and my porch. I sat in my rocking chair, the manila envelope resting on my lap. It was thick, stuffed with heavy bond paper to simulate the weight of $200,000 in cash. But inside it was a tombstone for Marcus's freedom. Marcus arrived at 9:01 a.m. He stepped out of his car, wearing a smirk that suggested he'd already won. He walked up the steps, looking at the bruise on my face with a sickening sense of pride. To him, that bruise was a trophy, a sign of his dominance. "Morning, Arthur," he said, leaning against the porch railing. "You look like you've had a long night, but I see the envelope. I knew you'd see reason. We're family after all." "I did a lot of thinking, Marcus," I said, my voice steady, "about what a man owes to the people who trust him. About the weight of a name. You forgot that names like Vance are built on decades of truth." Yeah, save the sermon for the church. Is it all there?" "Everything you've earned is in this envelope, Marcus. Every single cent." I handed it to him. He snatched it from my hand, his fingers trembling with greed. He didn't even say thank you. "Smart move, Pop. I'll make sure Sarah knows you were cooperative." "Open it at your office," I said as he turned to leave. "It's a lot to process. I want you to have the privacy you deserve when you see the final numbers." He laughed, a harsh, grating sound that startled the crows in the nearby maples. "Don't worry, old man. I'm going to savor every bit of this. If you were in my shoes, sitting on that porch after being disrespected in your own home, would you have handed him the envelope or called the police right then? Share your thoughts in the comments." I watched his SUV disappear into the fog. The moment his taillights vanished, I pulled out my phone and dialed the Pennsylvania State Police Fraud Division. "Detective Miller, this is Arthur Vance. The target is moving toward the Allentown warehouse. He has the evidence in his possession. Go." Marcus arrived at his Allentown warehouse, a bleak, corrugated metal building that served as the hub for his lies. He burst through the doors, ignored his sole remaining employee, and slammed his office door shut. He tossed the envelope onto the desk. He could already feel the weight of the money. He imagined the look on Elena's face when he showed her the stack. He tore the seal open. His face went from triumphant to ghostly white in a heartbeat. There was no money. Instead, a single photograph slid out onto his lap. It was a high-resolution shot of him and Elena at a jewelry store, taken through a long-range lens. He lunged for the envelope, dumping its contents onto the desk. Page after page of his own double brokering invoices fell out, each one stamped with a red fraud watermark. Then came the DOT logs, then the emails to the ghost carriers. At the bottom of the pile was a copy of his fake passport. His phone buzzed. It was a text from me. The police are 5 minutes behind you. The back door is chained shut for a safety inspection. And Sarah is reading your exit strategy right now. I hope the slap was worth it. Marcus lunged for the blinds. Down in the parking lot, her 3 unmarked black sedans and 2 state trooper cruisers had just pulled in, blocking his SUV. Men in police windbreakers were stepping out. He ran for the back door, screaming in frustration as he threw his weight against it. But I'd already made the call to the landlord. The door didn't budge. He was trapped in the tomb he had built for himself. While Marcus was being read his rights in a cold, oily parking lot, I was facing a much harder task. Sarah was sitting at my kitchen table in Bucks County. I'd called her over an hour after Marcus left, telling her it was an emergency. I laid the documents out on the table. The truth is a heavy thing to carry, and I hated that I had to hand it to my only child. Sarah, I said softly, taking her hand, I need you to listen to me. Marcus didn't go to Ohio last month. And he didn't lose that money in the market. He's been planning to leave you. I showed her the photos. I showed her the bank statements. When I finally showed her the photo of my bruised face, the one I'd been hiding with a high collar, Sarah didn't cry. She went perfectly still. It was a silence so profound it felt like the heart of the house had stopped beating. Before we go deeper, I would love to hear your point of view. Tell me what part hit you the hardest in my story, and share your thoughts in the comments. He touched you? She whispered, her voice trembling, not with sadness, but with a cold, hard fire. He thought he could bully me into giving him your money, Sarah. He thought he could use me to cover up his crimes and then vanish to Costa Rica. Sarah stood up. She walked to the window and looked out at the garden. He's not coming back here, is he, Dad? No, honey, he's not going anywhere for a very long time. 2 days later, I drove Sarah down to Philadelphia. I didn't bring the police. I brought a process server and 2 of the largest movers in the tri-state area. We had a court-ordered freeze on the contents of the Rittenhouse penthouse. When Elena opened the door, she looked like she was expecting a miracle. Instead, she got the 2 people whose lives she had helped Marcus dismantle. Who are you? She asked, her voice high and defensive. I'm the man who owns the money that paid for that robe, I said, walking past her into the marble-floored living room. The lease on this apartment was paid for with stolen funds. The accounts are frozen. You have 3 hours to pack your things in 2 suitcases. Everything else stays. As Elena dragged her bags toward the door, she and Sarah stood face to face in the hallway. Elena looked down at her shoes. Sarah looked through her like she was made of glass. Is that the necklace? Sarah asked quietly, pointing to the diamond pendant Elena was wearing. The one he bought last month for our anniversary? Elena didn't answer. She just hurried into the elevator. Sarah stood in the center of the empty, echoing penthouse and finally let out a single, jagged breath. I want to burn everything he ever touched, Dad. We'll start with the house, I replied. The trial of Marcus Vance became a local sensation. He tried to hire a high-priced lawyer with the last of his hidden cash, but I had more. I had the truth, and I had 40 years of investigative experience. In the courtroom in Allentown was cold and smelled of floor wax. I sat in the front row, wearing the same suit I'd worn to Sarah's wedding. Marcus sat at the defense table, his hair no longer gelled, his skin the color of a basement floor. When it was my turn to testify, his lawyer tried to paint me as a vindictive, senile old man. Mr. Vance, the lawyer sneered, isn't it true you've had a grudge against my client since day one? Isn't this just a grand scheme to steal his business and keep your daughter all to yourself? I looked at the jury, 12 honest people from Pennsylvania who knew the value of a hard day's work. I didn't need to steal his business. I just had to show the world what it actually was. A hollow shell built on the hard work of honest truckers and the savings of my daughter. Marcus didn't fail because of me. He failed because he thought loyalty was a currency he could trade for a penthouse. Then came the photo of my bruised face. When it was projected onto the large screen, the jury gasped. Marcus looked down at the table. He knew then that it wasn't just a fraud case anymore. It was a character study. As you listened to how this unfolded, Does it make you think about someone in your life who needs a reality check? How would you handle a betrayer like Marcus? Let me know below. 6 months later, Marcus was sentenced to 12 years in federal prison. I went to see him at the Graterford facility one last time before his transfer. "You think you won?" he hissed into the receiver behind the glass. "I'll be out in 8. I'm young. You'll be dead by then. And I'll find her, Arthur. Yeah, I'll find Sarah and I'll make sure she knows what you did." I leaned in, my breath fogging the glass. "Marcus, you aren't listening. I didn't just give the feds your invoices. I gave the Ghost Fleet drivers your home address and the location of that hidden account. You stole $300,000 in wages from men who drive 18-wheelers for a living, men who don't take kindly to thieves." Marcus's eyes widened with pure, unadulterated terror. He knew the code of the road. He knew that in prison, a thief who steals from working men is at the bottom of the food chain. "If you ever, and I mean ever, breathe Sarah's name again, I'll make sure those drivers get a copy of your commissary schedule," I whispered. I hung up and walked out into the fresh, cold Pennsylvania air, leaving him to the silence of his cell. Now spring came to Bucks County with a vengeance. The maple trees were budding, and the garden I'd shared with Martha was finally coming back to life. Sarah had moved into the guest cottage on the property. We spent our weekends stripping the old wallpaper and painting the rooms in bright, clean whites. The house felt different. The sour smell of Marcus was gone, replaced by the scent of fresh pine and the sound of Sarah's music. We were sitting on the porch one evening, watching the fireflies begin their nightly dance. Sarah looked at the scar on my jaw, which was now nothing more than a faint silver line. "Do you regret it, Dad? Letting it go that far?" I watched a hawk circle the woods. "I regret that he was the man he was, but I don't regret the envelope. Sometimes, you have to let a person think they've won so they'll show you exactly where their armor is weak. You have to let them strike you once to ensure they never strike anyone again." If you were Sarah, could you ever forgive a father for keeping these secrets until the last possible second? Or would you be grateful for the protection? I want to hear your perspective on this family dynamic. The Vances have lived in this county for 3 generations. We've been farmers, investigators, and teachers. We aren't people who seek out conflict, but we are people who finish it. Marcus thought he was entering the house of a weak old man. He thought he could bully his way into a fortune. Instead, he entered the den of a man who had seen the worst of humanity and knew exactly how to dismantle it. The envelope wasn't just a trap, it was a testament. It was proof that you cannot build a life on the suffering of others and expect the foundation to hold. Today, Sarah is running a local nonprofit that helps women in abusive financial situations. She uses the money we recovered from Marcus's Lumina account to fund it. She turned his greed into a lifeline for others. And as for me, I still sit on this porch. I still keep an eye on the driveway. But I don't look for Marcus anymore. I look for the sunset. I look for the peace that comes from knowing that the truth, no matter how painful, is always better than a comfortable lie. I would love to hear your point of view. Tell me what part hit you the hardest in my story and share your thoughts in the comments. Thank you for standing by me through this tale of betrayal, investigation, and ultimate justice. This story is a reminder to all of us. Never mistake silence for weakness, and never underestimate the lengths a father will go to protect his own. If this story resonated with you, or if you have a story of standing up to a bully in your own family, please share it below. Your courage helps this community grow. Don't forget to like this video, subscribe to Family Secrets and Revenge, and hit that notification bell. We have many more stories of truth and justice to tell, and we want you here for every one of them. Share this video with someone who needs to hear that they have the power to change their story. Until next time, stay vigilant, stay honest, and always look inside the envelope. Thank you for watching.